Today we're out in nature because I want to show you some filming techniques that you can use to get better video, better steady video while you're out there without a tripod. Now usually I recommend that people use a tripod whenever they can. I say tripods are our friends, and especially people who are new to video, it's a good idea to use the tripod as much as you can to get those nice steady shots. But then there are times, especially when you're following action like this Atlantic salmon that's running upstream right now here in Ontario, where a tripod might be detrimental. You might not be able to capture the shot as well if your camera is on a tripod. Now, what are some of the good tips that I can share with you about getting steady video, especially when you're handheld? The number one tip for being steady is to be as wide as possible. The more you're zoomed in here with your kit lens, trying to hold it steady, even though you might be holding it out here with a lot of tension, the closer, the more you're zoomed in, the more noticeable every little jiggle will be. Whereas if you're out completely wide, you're not going to notice that jiggle quite as much. And so keep as wide as possible. If you do need to be a little bit closer to your subject, that's no problem. You just step a few steps closer so that you've got a nice composition there. But it's always good to stay as wide as possible, especially when you're doing video, rather than be zoomed in and trying to get steady shots that way. Another good tip that I could share with you is to find a tree or a pole that you can lean up against to help steady your shot. So if I'm leaning up against a pole, that gives me that much more stability while I'm holding my camera steady as possible. Some might even not try and use the tension of the strap, but use more the connection with the pole or tree to get that steady shot. Of course, you'll also want to make sure when you're handheld that your stabilizer is on. The kit lens that comes with the 90D does have stabilization, and so you can have it off or on, and you need to make sure to get a little bit steadier shot to have that on when you're going handheld. If you've got the camera on a tripod, you can turn that stabilization off, and some people say that it's better to have it off when you're on a tripod. The stabilization mechanism isn't working hard when it doesn't need to because you're on a tripod. So if you can remember that when you're on a tripod, you can shut the stabilizer off, but when you're walking around handheld, make sure you have that stabilization on. Now, the other problem with using a tripod all of the time is that what you're going to end up getting is on the tripod is pans. You've got the camera on a tripod and you pan it like this because it's stuck on the tripod. Well, the problem is that pans don't look very natural. You might see people who are new to video, the video that they turn in, there is a lot of pans. They see action here, they see action over there, and they're moving from here to there, and even news camera photographers often do this a lot. They're panning around a lot. But unless you want to give your viewers some Dramamine before they watch your video, you want to try and stay away from panning. If you do have to pan and you're on a tripod, I recommend that you do it very slowly. So slowly that you can hardly notice that the pan is happening. I tell people that when you do a pan, if you have to do a pan, do it really, really slow. And when you think that you are doing it slow enough, slow down some more. We really don't want to see those fast pans. Now, when you're on a handheld, you can do more movie style by simulating a tracking device. In the movies, when people follow action or give that nice slide, their camera is on an actual slider on wheels. And it is just a beautiful sideways slide rather than a pan. And if you're going handheld, you can actually kind of simulate that type of move. If you've got the tension like we talked about here from your strap, rather than pan the camera this way and that way, then what you're doing is you're doing a nice slide movement, just as if your camera was on some tracks on a slider and making that nice horizontal move without any pan going on. Another great benefit of going handheld is that it allows you to do a more natural push in. Back in the days when people were using real video cameras, the cameras often had what's called a zoom lever on the camera itself, and people tended to overuse that zoom a lot. They were zooming in, zooming back, zooming in, zooming back, and again, you almost had to hand out Dramamine for your audience to take before they watched one of your videos. With all of this panning and zooming in and zooming out. Well, we want to avoid zooms altogether. Even though this camera here has a zoom, we don't want to use that while we're filming. You might still keep your camera recording while you zoom in for a closer shot, but of course you'd never use it in the edit itself. One great thing about DSLR filming is that the cameras or the lenses don't really come with a servo zoom. And so as a result, we see less and less zooms today in final videos, and that's a very good thing. But still, sometimes you want to get closer to the shot very slightly and carefully, and you can do that by slowly, again, getting the tension on your strap and slowly walking in to your shot, just very slowly. And again, that's something you can do if you're going handheld. It's more difficult to do if you're on a tripod. And so that's another benefit. Next time you watch a movie, try and find a zoom. It just doesn't happen. No one's zooming in the movies. What happens rather is that the camera is again on a dolly on wheels and someone is pushing that cart along. The camera itself is moving in instead of the lens zooming in. And that gives a much more natural feel to coming closer to an object. If you think about it, when in real life, when we want to get closer to something to see it better, we don't have eyes that zoom in to see it closer or better. We always have to step in closer to see things better. And so when we're moving into an object to get a better look at it, we're always stepping in. And so the way that they do it in the movies is much more like real life, when the camera itself physically moves forward or pulls back rather than zooming in and zooming out. And so if you want to have your videos look more like movies, then you need to remember that, and every once in a while try and do a very steady push in. You don't have to move very far to get that feel of moving in, and so you can kind of rock back and forth rather than stepping, because the stepping is going to be a lot more bounce on the camera. But if you position yourself so that you're just kind of rocking in a little bit, you can keep your camera pretty steady. Another trick to keeping a steady shot when you're filming, especially with the tension out here, is to not be breathing while you're getting the shot. Hold your breath. And so you've got your shot all lined up. I should have my viewfinder out here. You got your shot all lined up. You're ready to press record, and you take a deep breath. And you've got your shot. So one way that you can kind of hide a little bit of jiggle is to do a little bit of a slide in your shot. It doesn't have to be dramatic, it doesn't have to be fast, but if you've got your camera out here, you take your deep breath, you've got your feet kind of, your knees a little bit bent, stable on the ground, you press record, and then holding it steady, kind of do just a little bit of slide this way, and that will help hide a little bit of bounce that you might have. Now, one of the reasons why we're filming out here in nature is because my wife has a YouTube channel. She has 100,000 followers back in her home country in Vietnam, and she is wanting to show them the beautiful salmon that are running up our small creeks here in Ontario right now. And so she's out here with her GoPro, sticking it into the water and trying to get some shots of the fish as they swim by. So if I can find her, she's kind of left the area here, but if I can track her down, I'll get some shots with the 90D. And so the rest of the video that you see will be actual shots that I've taken handheld using some of the techniques and tips that I just shared with you. And we can see together how they turn out on the 90D. One thing that you'll probably notice is that when I do the slide, simulating that effect of being on a slider, it always helps to start your slide with a little something in the foreground, because then the viewer gets more of a sense of that slide. Even though you're not sliding very far, they see that effect more dramatically if you have something in the foreground at the beginning of your slide. So watch for that.
Okay, now the fish need to come here. Shut.